I found the tracker by accident, only a day after my son stopped by saying he needed to check my old car. At first, I thought it was just a strange coincidence. But when I reached under the truck and my fingers brushed that warm piece of metal, the world I knew shifted, slow and heavy, like ice cracking beneath my feet. My name is Ashton Pierce. I am 68. Saturday mornings have belonged to my truck for as long as I can remember. Even after my husband passed, even when the ranch got too quiet for comfort, I kept the routine alive. It made the silence feel like something I chose, not something left behind for me. That morning, I slid the creeper under the Ford, expecting the same familiar work I had done for decades. Instead, my knuckles hit the corner of something smooth, cold, and not at all part of my truck. I paused, shifted my flashlight, and eased myself closer until the beam caught it fully. A small black device, no bigger than a deck of cards, held tight to the frame by a thick magnetic plate. A tiny red light blinked at a slow, steady rhythm. At first, I thought it belonged to the shop, maybe some diagnostic tool I had forgotten, but when I pressed a fingertip to its surface, it was warm. Not warm from the garage, warm from use. I lay there for a long breath, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in the hollow space under the truck. Colton had stood right here yesterday, crouched over this same area, insisting he should double-check a noise before I drove into town. He had never cared about noises before. He had barely cared about the truck at all. My first instinct was to call him, to ask what this thing was and why it was there. But something inside me, some old instinct sharpened by years of living alone, told me to stay quiet, to move slowly, to understand before I spoke. I slid out from beneath the truck and wiped my hands on a rag that suddenly felt too thin. The device was still blinking under the frame, patient and alive, as if waiting for my next move. And all I could think about was who had placed it there, and how recently they must have done it. I reached for my phone to take pictures, already knowing this was only the beginning. I sat at the kitchen table with the photos of the device open on my phone, the images glowing against the wood grain like something radioactive. My mind kept circling the same fact: only 3 people had been in my garage this week. Jim, my neighbor, had stopped by 2 days ago to return a wrench he borrowed. 75 years old, hands shaking from age, still loyal as ever. He barely knew how to send a text, let alone install a tracker under a truck. Then there was the propane delivery man, young and polite, the kind who apologized 3 times for stepping on my grass. A stranger with no reason to watch me, no connection, no motive. And then there was Colton. I gripped the edge of the table as his name settled in my chest like a weight. Yesterday, he'd walked into the garage whistling off key, acting like he had all the time in the world. He said, "Mom, let me take a look at that noise you mentioned. Just want to make sure everything's safe." His voice had been too bright, too quick, and he lingered in the garage longer than usual. When I asked what he was checking, he laughed and said, "Just routine stuff," without looking me in the eye. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I wanted to believe he'd come because he cared. A visit from him always lit something warm in me, even if it only lasted a few minutes. But now, with the tracker printed clearly on my screen, his nervous smile replayed in my mind. The way he wiped his palms on his jeans, the way he said, "You trust me," right before leaving. I rose from the table and walked to the window, watching the empty driveway. My reflection stared back at me, older than I remembered, carrying a worry I didn't want to admit. Only 3 people had keys to my garage, and only one knew my truck well enough to attach something without leaving a trace. I picked up my phone again, my fingers trembling slightly, and forced myself to look at the photos one more time. I set the device on a folded dish towel, the red light still blinking like it had a pulse of its own. I took photos from every angle, zooming in on the serial number, the magnetic plate, the wiring. My hands kept steady, but inside I felt something cracking open, something I didn't want to look at too closely. I whispered into the empty kitchen, "Colton, what did you do?" The sound felt too loud in the quiet house. I wiped the tracker clean with a fresh cloth, careful not to leave my fingerprints on it. The methodical steps calmed me in a way document. Clean, seal, label, tasks I could control when everything else felt like it was slipping. I found a small cardboard box in the pantry and slipped the device inside, padding it with newspaper. Then I hesitated. My son's face flashed in my mind, 6 years old, with scraped knees, 17, with a cap and gown, 32 with tired eyes asking if he could borrow money I didn't have. I closed the box anyway, at the post office. The clerk scanned the package. England. Huh. Long way to send something this small. Just a gift, I said, forcing a smile. When the clerk dropped the box into the outgoing bin, my stomach clenched. I walked back to my truck slowly, gripping the railing as if the ground might shift beneath me. If the device were active, its signal could soon cross the Atlantic, letting whoever placed it track me even if the direction seemed meaningless to me. I sat in the driver's seat, the engine idling, my phone cold in my hand as I waited for whatever reaction would come next. 12 hours passed before my phone finally rang. I was washing a mug at the sink when the vibration buzzed across the counter. Colton's name flashed on the screen. He rarely called twice in a week. This was his third attempt in under an hour. I wiped my hands and answered. "Colton, everything all right?" His breath hit the line first fast, uneven. "Mom, hey, have you gone anywhere today?" "No," I said. "I stayed home." A beat of silence, then his voice thinned. "You sure? You didn't drive into town?" "Not even for a minute, I told you. I stayed home." He exhaled sharply, like he'd been punched. Okay, just checking." Something cold pooled in my stomach. "Why are you asking like that?" He tried to laugh, but it cracked. "No reason. Mom, I just thought you might be out. The truck sounded off yesterday, and I didn't want you breaking down somewhere. You never worried about that before." He didn't respond. The line hummed with quiet panic that he kept trying to swallow. I stepped away from the sink, gripping the phone tighter. "Colton? What are you really calling about?" His words tumbled out too fast. "Nothing. Mom, I'm just making sure you're safe. Can you check the truck for me? Maybe turn it on, just for a second." "No," I said. "Not tonight." Another silence, this one heavier. "Right. Yeah. Okay." Something inside me shifted small, sharp, undeniable. He wasn't asking about me, he was focused on the truck. He needed to know if it had moved, and why it hadn't. "Mom," he said quietly, "you'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" I let the question sit between us, thick as smoke. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said. He tried to stop me. "Wait." "Mom," I hung up before he finished. For a long moment, I stood in the doorway, listening to the empty house breathe around me. My phone felt heavier than it should. The walls seemed closer, and the truth I'd been trying not to see pressed harder against my ribs. Colton wasn't worried about me driving too far. He was terrified that I hadn't driven anywhere at all. After Colton's last call, sleep didn't come. I sat at the kitchen table with the laptop he'd fixed 3 months earlier. The one he insisted was running slow. I remembered how proud he looked when he said, "See, Mom runs like new." The memory stung now. I powered it on and opened the task manager the way he once taught me. A long list of programs loaded, most familiar. One wasn't. Remote access service. XE. A cold ripple went through me. I clicked deeper. The installation date matched the week Colton spent nearly an hour alone in my kitchen cleaning up junk files. "Colton, what are you doing?" The whisper felt too loud. I opened the access logs, bank statements, property documents, medical files opened at times I hadn't touched them. Files Colton shouldn't have known existed. My phone buzzed with a message from him. "Mom, call me when you're awake, please." I turned it face down. I opened the screen sharing settings. Allow remote control was checked. Connection logs showed repeated access, each around 20 minutes long. Always close to his nightly check-ins when he'd say he just wanted to catch up. He hadn't just watched over me. He'd watched through me, my screen, my accounts, my private life. My hands curled in my lap. I tried to find excuses, the way mothers do. Maybe he thought he was helping. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he didn't understand the severity. But his voice on the phone told a different story, breathless, terrified about the truck he could no longer track. I looked back at the screen. The last file he opened glowed at the top of the list. My will. By morning. I knew I couldn't sit with my fear alone. I drove to Chuck's auto shop on the edge of Bozeman, the place my husband trusted for 20 years. Chuck stepped out from behind the counter when he saw me, wiping grease from his hands. "Ashton, you all right? You look pale. I need you to look at something," I said, placing my phone on the counter and opening the photos of the device. He leaned in. His expression tightened immediately. "Where'd you find this?" "Under my truck." He stared at me for a long second before motioning me toward the back. "Come here." Inside the service bay, tools clattered softly as he adjusted his glasses. "This isn't just a tracker," he said. "It's a full ECU interface. Someone installed it to control the truck, not just watch it." My stomach dropped. "Control." "Yeah." He pointed at the wiring. "See this line? It hooks into the engine control unit. Whoever has the paired device can kill the engine while you're driving. Lock the brakes too." He exhaled slowly. "At highway speed, you wouldn't survive." I gripped the edge of the workbench. Chuck. Who uses something like that? He didn't sugarcoat it. People wanting someone gone. Insurance fraud. Jealous spouses. Debt collectors. Not amateurs. The room felt colder. Could it malfunction? Maybe it's just advanced tracking, no. He cut me off gently. This is intentional, and whoever installed it knows trucks. They had to get under the frame, run the wiring clean, hide the interface. He hesitated. "You got any enemies?" "Just my son," I almost said, but the words stayed trapped in my throat. Chuck continued. "You should go to the sheriff. Or maybe straight to the feds. Devices like this exist illegally for a reason." I nodded, though the movement felt distant. My thoughts spun back to Colton's shaking voice, his insistence that I start the truck, even just for a moment. Every piece clicked into place with terrifying ease. On my way out, Chuck rested a hand on my shoulder. "Ashton, whoever put that device on your truck never expected you to find it." I drove home slowly, gripping the wheel tighter than I meant to. The tracker had never been about following me. It had been about stopping me. I took the evidence folder to Robert Mitchell, the attorney who handled my husband's estate. He had known our family for nearly 30 years. When he saw my face, he didn't ask small questions. He just said, "Come in, Ashton," and closed the door behind us. I laid the photos of the tracker, the laptop screenshots, and a sheet of printed access logs on his desk. My voice felt foreign as I spoke. Someone's been inside my accounts. Property files, even my will. Robert scanned the pages slowly. His jaw tightened. "Who else has access to your home computer?" "Only Colton," I said. The words hurt even before he reacted. He set the papers down. "Ashton, I need to check something in the state database. Give me a moment." I nodded, my hands clasped in my lap, knuckles white. He typed quickly, pausing at one screen longer than the rest. His expression changed quiet, stunned, then grim. Ashton, 2 weeks ago, a durable power of attorney was filed under your name. I never signed anything. I whispered, I know, he said gently. The notary flagged the signature as suspicious. They attempted to reach you, but your phone didn't connect. I'd been at the cabin that weekend. No service. He turned the monitor toward me. My signature sat at the bottom of the document, almost perfect, but slightly too smooth. A practiced forgery. I pressed a hand to my chest. Why would he do that? What does he need that kind of control for? Robert clicked another file open. It gets worse. 3 days ago, someone used your ranch as collateral for a private loan. $340,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. He put my land, my family's land, on a loan. From who? Robert hesitated. A shell company tied to a violent loan group operating out of Idaho. When people don't pay, they apply pressure. He folded his hands. Colton's in deep trouble. The room buzzed faintly, like a distant alarm. I remembered Colton's rapid questions on the phone, the fear in his voice, the push for me to drive the truck. The tracker wasn't meant to watch me. It was meant to end things neatly. Robert leaned forward. Ashton, this isn't carelessness. This is desperation. Someone who forges power of attorney and risks a ranch like yours is preparing for consequences he can't escape. My breath shook as I looked at the forged signature again. My own name. Stolen. If my son was willing to rewrite my life on paper, I had no idea what he'd rewrite next. I drove home from Robert's office with the forged signature burned into my memory. By the time I reached the ranch, my hands had stopped shaking, replaced by a cold, steady determination I hadn't felt in years. If Colton wanted control, then he'd finally face the truth of what he'd done. I stopped at a small electronics store in town and bought 4 miniature cameras, a basic voice recorder, and a cheap laptop no one but me would ever touch. The clerk didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer any. Back home, I moved through the house slowly, placing each camera where it could see but not be seen behind the living room bookshelf, tucked near the kitchen clock, hidden in the old china cabinet facing the sofa. My movements felt practiced, almost surgical. Though my heart twisted with every step, I never imagined preparing my own home like a crime scene. Once the setup was done, I took out the business card Robert had given me months earlier and dialed the number he wrote on the back. This is Agent Martinez. A calm voice answered. My name's Ashton Pierce. I said, I need to report attempted fraud and something else, something dangerous. I told her everything in a low, measured voice, the tracker, the spyware, the forged documents, the loan. She didn't interrupt. But when I finished, her tone shifted. Mrs. Pierce, I need you to get a recorded statement from your son. Can you do that? Yes, I whispered, though the word felt like sandpaper. 2 agents will be nearby tomorrow morning. Don't confront him alone without the recorder on. After the call, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at Colton's contact on my phone. My thumb hovered before I pressed dial. He picked up immediately. Mom, come by tomorrow, I said. 9 in the morning, just you. A pause, then a shaky breath. All right. Yeah, I'll be there. I ended the call. The house settled around me, quiet and waiting. Tomorrow, the truth would walk through my front door. Colton arrived exactly at 9. Brielle stepped in behind him without waiting for an invitation, her eyes sharp and restless. I guided them to the sofa. The recorder in my pocket was already running. Colton tried for a smile. Mom, you sounded upset yesterday. What's going on? I sat opposite them. I found something under my truck. His shoulders stiffened. Brielle's fingers tightened around her purse. A tracker, I said. Professionally installed. Someone who knows engines put it there. Colton's breath hitched. Mom, I can explain, then explain. His mouth opened, closed. Brielle cut in sharply. It was just to keep her safe. Colton, tell her. He shot her a warning look. Brielle, stop. I leaned forward, safe from what silence stretched. Then Colton broke. I owe money, Mom. $340,000. They told me if I didn't pay, they'd take everything. I panicked. My throat tightened. So you forged my signature, used my ranch. He bowed his head, fingers digging into his knees. I thought if they believed you'd gone, the loan would transfer clean. I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't see another way, Brielle snapped. It wasn't supposed to get this far. The device was my idea. I didn't think it could do that break thing. Her words hung in the air, undeniable. Damning. I stood slowly. Agent Martinez, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You can come in now. 2 agents stepped from the kitchen. Colton looked up at me, eyes wet, completely shattered. He didn't fight when they cuffed him. 6 months passed before I opened Colton's 5th letter. The first 4 stayed sealed in my desk, their weight too heavy for the days when I still woke hearing his voice in the house. But this morning, with coffee cooling in my hands, I unfolded the page. Mom, I am trying. Therapy helps. I understand what I did. You didn't fail me. I failed myself. His handwriting shook. Mine would have too. I read it twice. Then set it beside Scout, the border collie I adopted 3 months ago. You'd have loved him, I murmured, though the words tasted bittersweet. Life had found its rhythm again, meetings at the senior center, workshops on financial safety, quiet evenings that didn't feel as haunted as they once did. When Jim stopped by with a jar of chili, he paused at the letter on the table. You gonna write back? Not yet, I said, but I didn't throw it away. He nodded gently. That's something. I watched him leave, then folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not hidden, not displayed, just held. If you want to hear more stories like mine, tap like, leave a comment, or subscribe. Your support helps these truths reach someone who might need them. Some wounds heal slow. Some roads don't end where you expect. And forgiveness, that remains a place I'm still learning how to walk toward.